Because of the large number of people here tonight, I think rather than having people raise their hands, if you put a question in a chat, then even if we can't get to it tonight, we would be able to follow up with you. And we will see if how much time we have at the end for questions as well. So I'm going to ask John now to open us with the territorial acknowledgement.
For thousands of years, Indigenous people have journeyed on this land. A relationship with the land is at the center of Indigenous people's lives and spirituality. Myself, I'm on the Saugeen Treaty 45.5 from 1836 territory, and the land on which I live is the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Odawa, and Anishinaabe people. Where we collectively live, a place called Turtle Island, was once softly walked upon by the Indigenous peoples, living in relationship with Mother Earth and all her inhabitants. As settler people, we have a history of living in a different relationship with the land, one of ownership, domination, and exploitation. We leave scars on the land, in the land, and above the land, and Mother Earth weeps. Our work as settler people is truth-telling and working toward reconciliation. This means recognizing the scars upon Mother Earth and its inhabitants, the scars on Turtle Island, and the peoples who have been violently robbed of place, relationship, language, and culture, robbed of dignity and humanity, not just before, but now and still. We are reminded frequently just by turning on the news of the heartbreaking stories like those associated with residential schools and the deaths of so many children. It is easy as settler people to casually acknowledge such things and then dismiss them as a history of which we had no part. Or we hear stories of murdered and missing Indigenous women and a need to search things like garbage dumps. Yet it is our work to do, since the scars are not just once or before, but they are now and they are still. It is our work to do in our attitudes, our ignorance, and our systems. Acknowledging the territory where we gather and the people who have traditionally called it home for thousands of years acknowledges the Indigenous people's stewardship of the land throughout the ages and is a way to continue to live out the United Church's apologies to the first peoples of North America. The acknowledgement supports our calls to others to pay respect to Indigenous peoples. It is also one way we can work toward right relations and move towards becoming the community that God calls us to be together. May it be so. In the manner of the Indigenous cleansing ritual of smudging, I'm going to offer this prayer. Feel free to join me in the actions while we reflect upon these words together. Let us pray. Creator, we ask for a blessing upon our eyes, that we may always see others as beloved children of the Creator. We ask for a blessing upon our ears, that we may listen to the words of others and receive them with good intent. We ask for a blessing upon our mouth, that we might speak truth and provide opportunities for others to do so. We ask for a blessing upon our mind, that we may understand the wisdom others bring and be open to creative ideas. We ask for a blessing upon our hearts, that we may live in hope. We are not alone. And we ask for a blessing upon our bodies, that we remember also to care for ourselves. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, John. So just quickly to take a look at what we wish to present to you this evening is our agenda. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the anxiety that maybe brings us here, community of faith profile. Brenna's going to talk about stewardship. Micol will talk about staffing. We're talking about shopping around and finding the deals. John will talk about restricted funds and collaborative ministry options and the webinars offered by the for treasurers. And then I will wrap up with looking at some long-term property redevelopment options that you might want to consider. So again, a full agenda, and we hope to get through it by 8:30 this evening. We're starting with anxiety because the truth of it is that's probably behind the motivation for a lot of you being here tonight, is that deficits make us anxious. And the beginning thoughts about this webinar started last spring when the congregational support commissions I work with started reviewing all the annual reports. And if you don't know, you're to send us a digital copy of your annual report each year. And we were noticing how many more congregations were reporting a deficit in their budgeting. And we realized that that is not something that we are usually comfortable doing. And so that is provoking a lot of anxiety. And anxiety takes a lot of energy, and it takes it away from some of the other things we do as congregations. So tonight we recognize that the finances are a concern for all congregations, especially because things have not returned to the way they were before the pandemic. And I believe we're recognizing that they won't return to the way they were. We are in a new chapter for our society and especially for our churches. The other thing that stress about finances can do is it can make people uneasy. And when people are uneasy and stressed, there can be conflict and fear. It can make it difficult to make decisions. And it can also be very difficult to envision new opportunities because we sort of get stuck in the worry. So while we can't balance your budget tonight, if you thought we were going to start handing out stacks of money, I'm sorry, we have to disappoint you. We are hoping we can provide some resources and ideas to help your community of faith address the issue of having a deficit and hopefully reduce some of those anxiety levels. If you are the treasurer or the chair of the board or holding one of those financial roles in your congregation, I also want to remind you that this is not a solo responsibility to balance your church budget. It is the work of the entire congregation. So please don't take this all on your own shoulders and think that you have to solve the problem single-handedly. And regional council staff, we are also here to help in any way we can. So with that as sort of our background, one of the first things every congregation is encouraged to do and could be very helpful when you are facing either a deficit or a surplus is to take the opportunity to complete your community of faith profile. And this is a process that allows you to gather data together and then review it and discuss it and ask some deep questions and be able to make some decisions about what are our strengths, what are our challenges, and most importantly, what are our ministry priorities. So some of you may have done this profile in the past. This fall, John and I updated it and streamlined it a bit. We removed the question like, do you have a photocopier? And we replaced it with questions like, are you equipped for online worship? Things that were now more relevant. There are 4 worksheets. One is the financial viability worksheet, which collects data from the last 5 years so that you can start to see trends in your income and expenses. It also looks at information around your givings and your donors, and asks some questions to get you thinking. For example, are we dependent on 1 or 2 very generous donors? What is the age range of our donors? Is that going to be a concern? What is our investment situation like? Do we have outstanding loans? What does our building cost? All of that information, and this is different than an annual report, budget, or financial statement, because it has multiple years, and it allows you to look for those trends and to see what is happening. There's also a demographic worksheet, and while yes, it does ask for some numbers about the people who attend your church, even more important, it asks about what are their gifts, their skills, and their passions, because we believe that God calls us and provides the gifts and skills for the ministry we're given. So let's take sort of an inventory of the gifts and skills in our congregation, and we might find we have incredible resources that we hadn't identified before. Like, who knew we had so many people who could play the ukulele in one congregation? I know the congregation I attend has a wonderful ukulele band. So when we start to look beyond what we think we know about people and actually ask questions about their gifts and skills and passions, we can learn amazing things. There's a real property worksheet. That's a real simple one to fill out because it's basically asking you just to list the property you own. Your church property. Do you have a cemetery? Do you own a manse? Do you have a vacant lot somewhere or a parking lot that's separate? So that's, again, just an opportunity to list what those resources are that you have at your disposal. And then we get to the Living Faith Story worksheet. And this asks the question of who are you as a congregation today, not 30 years ago, not even 4 years ago. Who are you today? And to get you thinking about what are your ministry goals. And I know a lot of congregations have often continue to try to offer all the programs they were offering 20 years ago, and they no longer have the volunteer base to be able to do that. Or they still have a governing body with 20 people on it, and they don't have the number of people to fill those positions. So this can also encourage you to start looking at how can you make changes that fit who you are today, and maybe name those key ministry priorities, an outreach project that is near and dear to your heart, or a new opportunity that comes out of the passions of the members of your church. And then you can set those priorities and see how your financing supports your ministry priorities, as opposed to picking your priorities after you've looked at your financing. Because people would rather give to something like being able to offer inspiring worship online and in person than make an offering to your hydro bill. But without hydro, you're not being able to gather and turn on the lights and the heat and the internet connections so that you can offer that inspiring worship. So that is what your Community of Faith profile is, and it can be found on the Regional Council webpage under Congregational Support Toolkit number 2. And that's on all 3 regional councils. Why this helps, in addition to what I've already said, it gathers all that information. You can look at those patterns and trends, framework for discussion, and what you need to do. When is it needed? It's needed if you want to apply for a grant or a loan. We need it as background information before the Congregational Support Commissions approve those applications. You need it if you are looking for new ministry personnel. It's the first step in that process. You will need it if you are looking to make changes to your existing call or appointment with your ministry personnel. You will need it if you're looking for approvals to start redevelopment or building projects. You'll need it for a background for sale of property. And to sum it up, you've probably figured this out. You need it as background for any decision requiring regional council approval. What we really recommend is that you do the profile, you update it annually, and your annual meeting is a great opportunity to have it approved by your congregation. And then it's there, it's ready to go with whatever need comes up during the year. And you'll also find a handbook on the Regional Council website that outlines the profile too, and a video. So, oh, that's me done for now. So those are important pieces that you can start with right now. And actually, we are hoping in 2023 that all congregations will complete their profile work. So now I am going to stop sharing and turn it over to Brenna.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. Again, for those who might not know me, my name is Brenna Baker. I am the Community of Faith Stewardship Support Person for our 3 regions. So glad to virtually meet you all tonight. I'm going to share my slides here. The work that I do primarily focuses on being proactive. So we try to give you tools for stewardship to be working on all the time, ahead of time, not just in December when you're having those really hard budget meetings, and not just for one-time congregational giving program. And so when we're talking about deficits, what we want to tell you is to stay calm and make a plan. As the leadership, which I'm assuming many of you are in some kind of leadership role in your community of faith, it's really important that you as the leadership remain calm, even as we acknowledge the anxiety that you might be feeling internally. Nobody wants to give to what we call a sinking ship. And I think you can imagine, and I'm not saying that your congregations are sinking ships, but that we can sometimes give that idea in the way that we talk about things, or in our tone, in our mannerisms and behaviors. So, you might think about an organization that you support outside the church. We get appeals from our local hospital, for instance, and if they wrote to me and said, you better give, or we're going to be in really big trouble this year, I don't know that I would really want to, especially if I was already supporting them, and I would think, hey, like, I already support you. What are you doing with my money? And why would I want to give you more if you're taking that tone with me? So it's really important that as much as possible, you avoid language that brings up kind of guilt or shame around giving. Tell people when you're talking about the budget or finances, which should be done often, not just at the annual meeting. Tell people about the ways that you have used their generous gifts this year. What have you done? What ministry have you lived out? And what would you love to do with more resources next year? So paint a picture about all that you could be doing if you could cover that deficit, if you could kind of balance the budget, and make sure that you are thanking those who have supported the ministry this year. Gratitude and a spirit of generosity is really contagious and can inspire others to give. And then explain calmly and without judgment, again, why there is a deficit. There's often very good reasons for it, especially in COVID. There's so much that's beyond our control. You can talk about, well, we started a new outreach project this year, which is a really great reason to have a deficit, is that you're trying something new, you're kind of experimenting, you're taking a risk, or maybe we unexpectedly lost a partnership with a renter. tell people why there's a deficit. And then explain what your plan is. So you have to explain the plan. That will tell people why you won't be in the same position next year. So what is your plan to increase revenue and or reduce expenses? Be specific. Are you planning to cut maintenance costs? Will you increase PAR givings by 10%? Maybe you're going to seek out new renters. What are you doing to either eliminate or maybe just reduce that deficit for next year? And then it's really important that you check in with these goals once a month or so throughout the year and adjust accordingly. So we can't just say them in January and then kind of never talk about them again. You have to set goals and check in with them, maybe with your leadership, with a stewardship committee, with a finance committee, whoever that might be. There's an author that we like in our stewardship work. His name is Lovett Weems. Great, like Southern American name, I think. The book is Generosity, Stewardship, and Abundance. And he says, never talk about money apart from mission. So when you're standing up there inviting people to give, you can't just ask for them to give for the sake of giving. You are not in the building management business. So like Lynne says, nobody wants to give to cover the hydro bill. Yes, that's a part of what we do, but how does it enable your ministry? Your calling is not just to survive. Your calling is to live out the gospel. So whenever you're talking about the money, you have to frame it as, this is what the finances allow us to do. It allows us to bring hope, to feed people, to comfort people, to work for justice, whatever it is. You have to tell people always what the money allows you to do. I want to introduce very briefly a somewhat complex topic that is called scenario budgeting. This comes to us from the wider nonprofit world. And has particularly emerged in COVID, as you can imagine, where things are in flux and we don't know a lot of what's coming at us. I'm just going to introduce it briefly tonight with the hope that you might go back once these slides are posted and look through it more closely and more carefully, and that you might even just Google. If you Google scenario budgeting nonprofit, all kinds of things will come up. So scenario budgeting is not a replacement for your regular budget. So you're still going to create your budget that's passed at the annual meeting. This is not a replacement for that, but it's just a tool to imagine various possibilities and create and prepare that plan. So you think about, if X happens, then we will do Y thing. And when you're starting, think about what you know. What is reliable? You probably have PAR givers that stay pretty consistent year to year, maybe some renters that you can really rely on. What are your hopes for the year? What are the things that you would love to do, right, with your ministry? What are the new projects that you would love to take on? And then what is uncertain? So if you're a church in transition, maybe you don't know how long you'll be without a minister. You're not quite sure how COVID may impact givings. Rentals right now, I think, are still kind of in flux. The hybrid situation of things, the cost of building repairs. Make a list of all that is unknown for the coming year. And again, here's some examples, right? For income, so income unknowns, fundraising projects. There was a church I served in Saskatchewan that used to run a food booth at the fair every summer. They sold like hot dogs and hamburgers. And in a good year, if it was a sunny, warm year where lots of people were at the fair, they might raise $30,000 in their weekend at the fair. If it was raining all weekend, they might raise $10,000, right? Which is quite a big difference. So there's a lot of unknowns with fundraising. Maybe the volunteers who did something are no longer interested in doing that. You might not know what the results of a giving program will be if you apply for a grant, whether or not you'll get it. Bequests and memorial gifts are obviously not they're really appreciated but not reliable. And then rental income can come and go. And in terms of expenses, again, staffing, especially if you have transition with your ministry personnel, what that costs and when the cost will come is unknown. Building maintenance, your furnace might break, something like that. Or then outreach or ministry needs, ideas for new programs. It's hard to know sometimes. A great idea sometimes comes up in October and you need to kind of find the money for it. And then, so when you're looking at a budget, you can explain to stakeholders, your donors, how the programming will be impacted by possible unknowns. So you might say, if we are able to increase offerings this year by 10% through a giving program, et cetera, then what we would love to do is experiment with a seniors lunch once a month, or, fill in the blank. If our major renter does not return by April 2023, a very specific time, so you're not kicking that can down the road forever, then we will consider how building maintenance might be achieved by volunteers and create a plan for the summer. So if X, then Y. We are going to take a risk and hire a part-time communications assistant. Sometimes you need to spend money to make money, right? If you can do that, maybe that would be something to try. And then if we have seen a demonstrated growth of engagement and offerings by November 2023, we will continue the position. So if X, then Y. And everybody agrees to that. Everybody knows about it at the start. You're doing it when things are good, not under duress. That's kind of the best way to make a plan. Again, this is something you can come back to once the slides are posted. I just made a very rough budget about things that could change or evolve, kind of with what the budget it would be, and then a scenario A, scenario B, where one is kind of on the higher end of things, one is on the lower end. Maybe you negotiate a new rent. Maybe you can increase fundraising, or maybe volunteers only do one event this year instead of two. Loose or one-time giving, you can maybe make that a priority and really increase it, or it's not so much a priority, or you're finding people are not coming back to the building, and that goes down. So, and then each of these would have an action plan with them. And same with expenses, right? This happens or this happens, maybe. How does that impact your ministry? What choices would you make? So again, don't feel like you have to read all of this right now, but come back to it once the slides are posted. And just for more info on that, one great place would be this website, Propel Nonprofits. You can search for scenario planning, and there are templates, so you can just fill in the blank, a webinar to watch more in depth, and lots more info there. So just a couple other brief topics I'll mention. We're moving into this cashless society, which was already happening pre-COVID, but I think is increasing now as people are hybrid. So they might not even be in your building, but feel themselves to be a part of your community of faith. People are also more wary of just like touching things and passing things, right? So the cash is going by the wayside. So you want to find new ways to encourage online giving, and there's lots of ways to do that. We always tell people, make it easy and as instant, as fast as possible. So one option, I know most people are on this, but in case you're not, e-transfer is a great way. If it's not already set up with your bank, make it happen. Make sure to advertise in all of your communication what the email address is for that. So you can make a donation to our ministry by e-transfer. This is the email address. Make it easy. Canada Helps is a great way. You can set up an account with Canada Helps and then put that link everywhere, again, in all communications. There's a slight fee for that, but it's not too bad. Your case for support. This is you're telling people why they should give you their money and what you're going to do with it. Put that on your donate or give page, make it prominent on your website. Tell people where their gift goes. It does not just go to the church, What are you doing with it? Why does it matter? Why does it make a difference in the neighborhood? And something like you're offering supports our ministries of education, justice work, and hospitality. Thank you. Simple as that. Or because of your gift, we can feed the hungry, bring hope to those who grieve, and welcome neighbors into our building. Perfect. Just very easy. And then promote PAR. So this is the best way if you're not on the PAR system, or if you are, but you could increase the amount of givers who are on PAR. It's the best way to ensure predictable income month to month. So you know at least every month probably what you're getting. Of course, people come and go or move or whatever, but it becomes pretty reliable. We also want to make sure that you know about the grants and resources that are available to you through the region and through the national denomination and beyond. There are mission support grants through each region. So these are under the resources tab of your region website. You can apply twice a year, which is awesome. And these support specific ministries, outreach initiatives, etc. And it goes from something as small as, I think some of the grants are for like $500 for a little, something project that doesn't have a lot of costs or upkeep, but needs a little bit of funding, all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars. So come up with a great idea and utilize those resources. There are grants available from various extension councils, which are, I think, and Lynne can correct me if I'm wrong, funds remaining from the presbytery system. And there's all sorts of different foci, I guess, for those grants. So check again your region website. Capital expenses are one of the things that can be covered by those in different circumstances. So make sure you take a look at those. The United Church of Canada Foundation, our national denomination, has a lot of different granting opportunities, again, for new ministries, for all kinds of things. And especially, I would say, for clergy, make sure you know about that if you're doing a sabbatical or some kind of extended learning opportunity. There's a brand new grant from the foundation for debt relief. You have to have at least $100,000 worth of debt that is at least 10 years old. Don't ask me the specifics on any of that, but that's what the parameters are. So go ahead and check that out if that applies to you. That could really ease payments on debt. There's also local community grants. So check with your municipality, see what they have. They're often looking to support projects. So you might not be able to have your worship funded per se, but if you do a program that's for the whole community that is not, I guess, evangelistic in nature, you're not kind of preaching or anything like that, there's often lots of money available for those sorts of things. Faithful Footprints is a great way to get a grant to green your building. So if you're doing capital improvements that are environmentally friendly, you can probably get some kind of grant for that. And greening sacred spaces is another ecumenical space, just to look at ideas for making your building a little bit more environmentally friendly and often saving money that way. The last little threads of things I'll mention, the importance of getting quotes on your services. So when was the last time your community of faith got a new quote on landscaping, cleaning, internet, snow removal, etc.? Take time to shop around, and if you get a better deal, tell your current provider and see if they will match it. This is responsible stewardship. I know sometimes we develop long-term relationships with somebody and we feel awkward about ending that, but the ministry and the well-being of that ministry needs to kind of trump that, and often they're willing to do something. So that's a way to, it won't fix everything, but you could save some money here and there. And then, I just want to offer this idea of spending money to make money. I know we're not all in that position, but sometimes a few $1,000s could hire like a children's Sunday school worker that could really promote that program to families in the area and get more people there, or a social media communications person. That's something to look into. Also, this idea of who is in your community. So we often are just thinking of the people in the pews on Sunday morning, but do you have a long-term renter that uses your building? Maybe it's a fitness group, maybe some kind of seniors group meets there that isn't directly connected with the church. A lot of times those people think of your church as their church. Remember, they're going there once or twice a week as well for their meetings. They are invested in that place remaining available to them. Have you ever asked them to participate in your ministry? Have you ever asked for their support? They might be very happy to give a donation to you. So think about how you might strengthen those relationships and expand your idea of who is in your community. Okay, and there is no quick fix. We said, we're not here to do a quick fix, but my last thing is to say, there is Called to Be the Church, The Journey, which is the program that I am so honored to offer to our communities of faith with my stewardship team that works across our country and across the denomination. There's all kinds of stuff coming up. The program offers modules over a series of weeks where you work with other communities of faith in a cohort, and then you get ongoing coaching and support throughout a year or so. Coming up will be module 1 in kind of March-ish, where you can bring a team of about 3 people together and learn these best practices. Everything I'm saying here, we dive into in greater depth and give you a chance to practice and get feedback. In March, we'll do Getting Started in Stewardship, which is just a kind of one-off overview of the program and what we do. So if you have any questions about that, you can contact me for more information. Okay, and that's it for me. Let's stop there.
My name is Micol Cottrell. I am the Minister of Pastoral Relations for Antler River Watershed, Horseshoe Falls, and Western Ontario Waterways Regional Councils. It's so great to see so many people here tonight. When Brenna was talking, I thought of a story from my past church. Like a lot of churches through COVID, we did services online only. And the church I was at, a wonderful church, had been doing televised services for many years and internet services as well. And during the pandemic, when people weren't in the church giving their offering, we started having a conversation. I think it might have been our treasurer. It was definitely a discussion at our board. How do we let people know how they can give when they can't be in person? And we clued in finally, or they clued in finally, and it was a wonderful idea. In our services that we record and put on TV and online, we'll put information on how to give, because people want to share and celebrate this ministry. And our area covered a large area that we played. So that's something as Brenna was talking about, share as many places you can. That's my thought of it. Many of us have gone online. Many of our communities have online worshipers or on TV worshipers now who will continue that. I have the privilege to talk about staffing. Part of my role is supporting ministry and personnel committees, but also supporting the work of pastoral relations, including the policy around pastoral relations and some of their staffing issues. I was joking with Lynne, John, and Brenna as we were planning. Oh, sure, you give me the piece about firing people. That's not all we're talking about, so don't worry. One of the important things to remember as we enter into conversations around deficit and the struggles of money is that one of the priorities, the top priority, is meeting your payroll. And that can be a hard thing to put in perspective sometimes. As leadership in your church, sometimes other people in the church in the moments of anxiety may wonder about that, but that is the first bill you pay is your payroll. And this comes from the financial handbook. The timely and accurate handling of payroll is the top priority, and the treasurer is responsible for part of it's ensuring that there is enough cash in the bank. So thank you to those who do that work, who work with ADP or who look after payroll in your church. So when we're talking about changing staff or changing ministry, a change of pastoral relationship, it's always a big, difficult conversation. I know it's one that all of us, it's always a little heartbreaking when if we reach this spot where this is a question of, do we need to change who we have in leadership, lay and ministry leadership in our church. So as we do this work, we want to move with care and act with love. When we discern what it is, we discern about letting staff or ministry go or changing hours of staff or ministry, one of the things we want to look at is the non-financial cost. We all know that the work people do is more than a budget line. And sometimes the budget line determines what we can afford. And so to start thinking about when it is a time, that conversation about, do we need to make changes to staffing, to ministry? What needs to be, what would be let go of? What would have to be shifted? For example, if you've got an administrator at your church that's 20 hours and you have a lot of rentals, well, who's going to look after that piece now? It needs to be shifted because it's important work. If you're going to part-time ministry, there are parts of that ministry that will need to be continued. So how do you continue that? Is a pastoral support, a pastoral care team in the church need to be set up? How is the church going to live out the functions and the ministry that has been held by individuals in the past? So you want to think about those non-financial costs, which will help in the discerning the change needed. And it's helpful that Lynne began talking about the community of faith profile, because when we talk about major changes in staffing or ministry, we need to continue to go back to who are we and what do we need? Because that changed over time. Some of our churches were blessed for a season to have large staffing complements. Some churches had large amounts of numerous congregational designated ministry. A church may have had employees helping with youth groups, and the youth are not in that church anymore, and that season has passed, not because of anything that was done, but that's just the season we've shifted away from. So discerning the vision and the life of the church and how that reflects in your staffing and ministry complement. Also discerning, what would be let go of with the changes. You want to take care for the process that's involved. There is a clear process that has to be followed if there is going to be a change of staffing. Lay employees, the governing body makes decisions about lay employees, but they fall under the Employment Standards Act. And after I'm done this slide, I'll show you where you can find the Employment Standards Act. But terminating an employee, giving notice, termination pay, those pieces are outlined in the Employment Standards Act. And the United Church strongly recommends that if you are going to be terminating lay employee, that you consult an employment lawyer, because they can walk you through the steps. Most of us don't live our lives with the Employment Standards Act. So it is helpful to, it is a worthwhile investment lots of times to make sure you do things with love and care and according to the law. For change of pastoral relations, there is a policy in the manual. I'm not going to go through step by step with that policy, because the very first step is if you are looking for a change of pastoral relationship, and a change of pastoral relationship includes ending the pastoral relationship, but it also includes changing the terms of a pastoral relationship. So if you're changing the hours, if you are entering into a shared ministry with another community of faith, these change the pastoral relationship, and there are steps for that. Sometimes in churches, it can feel like we're alone, especially in moments of anxiety. One of the things that myself and the Human Resources Commission and Lynne and John with the Congregational Support Commission, we help walk churches through these moments many times. And so we can help you if you are in this situation, walk through with care and love. So if there's a change of pastoral relationship, if you feel there's need to change the terms of the pastoral relationship, you're the hours, or letting go of a minister or your minister, please reach out first. Through this, the M&P is a very important part. The M&P is part of the care of employees and ministry personnel. They're the ones who check in. One of the sayings around ministry personnel work is that nothing should be a surprise. So if your church is having major financial concerns, don't leave it as a surprise for your staff or your minister, because we don't want to, nobody wants to be at the point where you have to surprise somebody by saying, you know, we just don't have the money. We're going to have to change your employment. You also want time to plan these things. A change of pastoral relations, if that does have to happen, it can take usually at least 4 months, because you need to have your congregational meeting, you need to have some work done, and then you have to give 3 months of notice, or 90 days of notice. So again, the first step is to reach out. And also, if there's going to be changes of staffing and ministry, you know, the M&P will help care for the staff, but also think about how you're going to take care for your congregation, because these changes do have an effect. They sometimes remind us that we're not who we once were, and that is a pastoral care need. Or sometimes it means saying goodbye to a beloved employee, or may lead to the loss of a minister. So make sure also in that care that you care for the staff, that you care for the minister, that you care for yourself as you're leading this work, but also that you're caring for the community faith as a whole. So let's see if I can remember how to do, I'll do the small savings add up, and then I'll do all the websites after. So Brenna, this is the bit more happy note of my part of the presentation. Brenna has shared a little bit about the small savings that add up. And I encourage you to shop around. As Brenna said, we do have relationships that are formed, and yes, there are times to honor those relationships, but sometimes it's good to shop around. It's good to price check. So here's some simple areas you can do that. Buying United, and I'm going to show you this website, Buying United. If you haven't been there, go check it out. I like to poke on there every once in a while and see what discounts are available. If your church is looking at a new computer, the United Church has a deal with Dell Computers for a certain percentage off for the church and for employees of the church. So that's a nice little bonus to let your employees know as well. Buying United came about over 10 years ago now. I don't know how many years exactly, but the United Church realized, hey, there's other organizations like teachers, teachers who have gone around, school boards have gone around and said, what deal would you give us? We've got this many employees, we've got this many organizations, what deal would you give us? That's what Buying United did. So they've got a deal with Dell. They got a deal, they have information on there about using TechSoup. TechSoup is technology companies that offer software at a reduced rate, or sometimes free with an administration rate, to charities. So my previous church, they upgraded the Office suite, and they were able through TechSoup to get free Office Pro, which included emails, which included file sharing. That's, these little things add up. That's like over $200 cost normally that they were able to get for an administration fee of, I think, like $20 or something like that. So check that out. And it's also got information about some other hosting services and pieces like that. It's also got some of the staff, the employee benefits that are offered as well through there. Consider United Church Protect. One of the things we all need to carry is insurance, and sometimes we have insurance brokers we love to use, and that's great. But some of them offer United Church Protect, or you can look at United Church Protect. There has been some changes recently made in terms of how United Church UCC Protect is going to be working. That means that there'll be a reduction in the costs. I know a church that a number of years ago, they had someone working, someone in the church who worked in insurance, and so they asked, can you see what the best rate is? And they found out United Church UCC Protect was the lowest rate for them. So check into that. Talk to your phone company. So this I would never have thought of this until again at my last church. We had a wonderful member of the congregation, active member of the board, who worked for the local telecom company, and he said, have you talked to them about their nonprofit or charity rate? I never even thought of that. I never, I think most churches haven't thought, does the phone company have a reduced rate for nonprofits and charities? And this phone company did, for sure. And again, it's not a huge savings, but these all add up. So when you look at buying a new computer and your software through buying United, insurance, UCC Protect, you get a, let's say, 5% discount on your phone rate. These all add up. A lot of churches are looking at how they do banking. Gone are the days when many banks would offer no fee banking to churches, and so a number of churches used to have every committee had a bank account because they were free. And so a lot of churches are looking at, how do you bring those together so that you're not paying as many fees. I've also heard churches that shop around to see which bank would offer them the best rate, or sometimes, I'm blanking on the word, the other form of bank. I can't even think of the word.
Co-op?
Yes.
Credit union.
Credit union.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, my brain just paused. You can tell it's evening. Some credit unions offer no fee banking to churches. So shop around. Again, all these things add up. And we're going back. So I'm going to try to share my screen to show you quickly those wonderful sites. You should be able to see my screen with Buying United. So if you play around on there, there's Dell's computer deal that it's 5% off laptops, 10% off monitors, 15% off select configurations. You can sign up for their deals and they'll give you the business deals that they have. So that's Buying United. There is the website for United Church Protect, and that explains the changes that are coming that are going to reduce the rates for churches. You can see one is as much as a 15% rate decrease. So that is substantial with the rates that have been rising so much for churches over the last couple of years. This was the United Church's way of responding and looking at how to take on some of the work from the United Church and lower the rates for people. Your Guide to the Employment Standards Act is an important thing for your M&P committee. to know about. And there is a training video on the Regional Council websites under the Pastoral Relations Toolkit for lay employees, and we talk about the Employment Standards Act on that. So I'm going to hand it over now. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. So I am going to speak on a couple of different topics. One of them is restricted funds. So restricted funds can be split into two areas, those that are designated and those that are regionally restricted. Designated funds, these are funds that have been designated by the community of faith. This includes funds that have been given with no determined purpose, and the community of faith decides to designate them for a particular use, or could be funds that the community of faith have decided to set aside for a particular reason. Such funds, if you have them, can be redesignated for use with the agreement of the body that made the decision to designate them, which could be, for instance, your congregation or your governing body. Restricted funds are those that have been given to the community of faith for a specific purpose, or raised for a particular purpose and are designated for that purpose and cannot be used. It's against CRA regulations to even borrow from these funds. Funds from property sales are automatically restricted by the regional council. During COVID, an exception was offered that allowed using restricted funds for salaries. This exception is no longer in play, so please be aware of that. I do get that question periodically still. Restricted funds can be used sometimes, and this may include a ministry plan at the time of an amalgamation. The funds that go to the amalgamated congregations, part of the plan could be to use a certain amount of those funds for particular purposes right from the get-go. Or it could also be restricted funds could be given at the request to the Congregational Support Commission for use. Congregational support commissions in all three are amenable to approving the use of these restricted funds for building improvements or new ministry initiatives. They're not usually, and I'll say mostly or ever, allowed to be used for paying salaries or things like that. But if you have other things that are costing some money, then you could ask for the use of restricted funds. I'd like to touch on collaborative ministry also briefly. Collaborative ministries are those where two or more communities of faith work together in support of one another's ministry. In such cases, each congregation remains independent. Collaborative agreements take many forms in structure and in participation. They are really what you can imagine. They can be as simple as sharing ministry personnel, or as comprehensive as sharing on multiple fronts like M&P committees, administrators, specialized staff, supporting or sharing in each other's programs and fundraisers. Collaborative agreements can help a community of faith to move out of a silo mentality. For way too long, we have operated independently and have been unwilling to share information about our churches or the people and the gifts that they have for various reasons. But rather than have this silo mentality, it encourages a broader understanding of ministry. Collaborative agreements also broaden the understanding of United Church ministry as a whole, in the involvement, getting to know others and learning how things may be done differently, or how others do things that may enhance our own programming. It also expands involvement in communities. It allows for more involvement in communities by running one program, for instance, in multiple locations. So you would be getting involved in some of the other churches' programs, and they would get involved in yours. And you get to know not only the community of faith, but also the communities in which they are situated, as well as the people in them. Collaborative agreements also allow for the sharing and reducing of costs, possibly, as Brenna had talked about, getting quotes for things like contractor costs, snow plowing, cleaners. You might be able to get a group discount if you have 3 churches or 4 churches that are in a collaborative agreement and you broker a deal with a contractor around doing all of the properties rather than just one and everybody doing that independently. Collaborative agreements also allow for the sharing of volunteers and staff, like perhaps a Sunday school coordinator, a treasurer, or a tech person. They also allow for the engagement of specific ministries more fully. It might allow you to concentrate on a couple of particular areas of ministry that you would like to focus on while supporting the other community of faith ministries as well. Resources for collaborative agreements are found in the Congregational Support Toolkits number 9 on our regional council websites. And one thing to bear in mind in collaborative agreements is you must be financially stable enough to be able to support your own ministry and property costs. I'd like to touch briefly on the treasurer's webinars that are available. ChurchX is an educational platform that the United Church will be using moving forward. On it, you will find many different learning options. The resources from United in Learning, which is a platform you might be familiar with, will be moving over to the ChurchX platform. Through this platform, you can find access to previous webinars for church treasurers and monthly upcoming webinars for church treasurers, for instance. It's highly recommended that your treasurers and even your finance committee members attend to find out best practices and to get financial questions answered. I will pass it over to Lynne.
So I know we've been presenting you with a lot of information. Everybody take a deep breath. We've almost made it through the agenda. And as we've said, the recording and the slides will all be available in case you haven't managed to memorize everything we've said so far this evening. So the last piece I wanted to touch on was long-term options, because you may have heard about an organization called Kindred Works, or sometimes it used to be called UPRC, the United Church Property Corporation. No, United Property Resource Corporation. There we go. And what this is a United Church corporation that has the purpose of helping congregations redevelop their property in order to provide affordable housing. And this is something that has a lot of congregations in Horseshoe Falls region are participating in this, and some as well in Antler River Watershed and in WOW. It is an excellent opportunity, particularly if you own your a large lot, because they often leave the church as it is and then use some of the surrounding property to be able to build townhouses or low-rise apartments, that type of thing. So what this does is create a long-term income stream for the congregation. And I'm just checking. So there we go. But the income is based on a percentage. So I don't want you to think that they come in and build it and you get 100% of the rental income. What happens is, say your land that you put towards the development is worth 10 or 15% of the total cost of building these housing units, then you would get 15% of the income stream moving forward for year after year after year. And depending on how big the development is and how much the value of the land is that you contribute, then that can have varying degrees of income from, maybe $25,000 a year up to tens of thousands per year. So that is something to be considered if you have the available land and you have time, because this is not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take at least 5 years from the beginning to when construction is finished and you start to see income. And sometimes it's the reason for the delay is because they have to get all the municipal planning done and approvals and rezoning, and those sorts of things can take time. Unfortunately, this is not usually an option for our rural congregations because we don't have the municipal infrastructure in the rural areas. You don't, if you're on a well and a septic system, then you really are probably not able to create multifamily dwellings. But for the urban areas, this is an option that you might want to look at. And what I would also let you know is that because Kindred Works is a United Church corporation, then it's something that is trustworthy. We work with them on a regular basis. And the whole process is under the umbrella of the United Church of Canada, which makes it unique. The Toronto United Church Corporation also does some development work. They're usually known by the acronym TUC, and you can find information about them as well on our websites and by Googling the United Church TUC, and they can provide assistance as well. But what is nice about Kindred Works is they have been in partnership with the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Association and have received funds to help build these affordable housing units. I also wanted to touch on rental income. Brenna mentioned this a few times in her presentation as well. So one of the things you might discover when you do your community of faith profile, remember we mentioned that at the beginning, is that we have a really strong asset in our building. Maybe it's accessible, maybe it's got some great space that is not being utilized well. And perhaps with either a small investment in some redecorating or some renovations, or maybe just as is, you could generate better income from rentals. So some churches are finding that it's possible to rent out some spaces as office space. Perhaps you can have an area that can be turned into a daycare space, or Montessori schools rent space from a lot of our churches. We have one church in St. Thomas that's just entered into agreements with a day program for disabled adults. So they're going to use sort of the Sunday school areas during the week, and then that area is available to the congregation on the weekends. Different faith groups often will come in and rent space maybe Sunday afternoon for their worship service or other days of the week, so that you could share your sanctuary space with them. And the key thing here is at market rates. We know that you're probably providing space free of charge to the local scouting group, or an anonymous group, or some other outreach programs. But when it comes to renting for income, you want to make sure you're getting market value. So you might want to consult a realtor to help you determine what is the square footage market value for that. And we also would suggest that you have a lawyer or a realtor help you draw up the lease agreement. And for these types of leases, it does require regional council approval. Some people are also renting out outdoor space for things like cell towers. Maybe there's parking is in a shortage in your area, and if you're downtown, maybe you can talk to the municipality about providing some parking areas. Some have started to provide rental space for food trucks in their parking lots. And has anybody heard about pickleball? Like, everywhere I look, pickleball is the hot new thing and nobody can find enough space. How many United Church gymnasiums have we got that might become the pickleball place in your community? And that could be set up as a rental opportunity. hey, maybe even your parking lot in the summer could be turned into part of it into a pickleball opportunity. So again, looking at our buildings with a fresh perspective and seeing what might be used. Perhaps there's even some other agencies in your area that would like a place to do some counseling or run some health programs. Those are opportunities too to reach out to and find out whether you can create a partnership and also get some income. There are resources on the congregational support toolkits that also talk about things that you need to include in a lease, such as third-party insurance and other things to consider when you are creating these leases. The ones that we need to approve are not the ones to the local piano teacher for an hour a week to teach your students. These are more the long-term or places where they are using a significant amount of the property or have exclusive use. And that is all spelled out on our website. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, but I did want to add that one of the hardest things that I think we see as staff is congregations who have left it too late. So if you are starting to have financial anxiety or struggle with a deficit dilemma, don't wait. Don't hope that, well, maybe next month it'll be better. Reach out to us for support and we can, go through some of the things we've talked about tonight, or maybe offer other options, because you want to have the time to be able to make good decisions. And if your financial situation continues to get worse, that's just going to increase your anxiety and make it harder for you to be flexible and explore new opportunities. So again, we thank you for joining us. We know this is a challenging topic for congregations, and I see that we do have a couple of minutes left. I'm sort of looking at John and the other presenters, whether we want to offer time for questions or ask people to just put them in the chat to see if there's a way we can address this.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. We will take some questions. So very quickly, if you want to ask a question, please go to the bottom of your screen where reactions button is and raise your hand, and we'll try to address as many as possible in order. I would like just to say in the chat, and I'm not sure, I don't think everybody can see it because of the chat restriction, unfortunately, but Megan said that they have 2 hours a week. The county does pickleball in their Christian education hall. They even paid to have the lines put down. And Sherry says, we have been successful in obtaining a community grant to cover the property cost to provide our space free to community groups. So that's interesting. If there are any questions.
I would love to see us become the pickleball congregations of Canada or something like that.
No questions.
Wow.
No, we gave them too many things to try. So
yeah, so much
everybody's
information.
got so many things to try.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of our hopes tonight too was that by us sharing our individual pieces, you'll also know who to go to with some of your questions. And if you do mistakenly email one of us and it should be the other person, we'll help forward that to the right place.
Yeah, thanks, Micol. We have John Hurst with a question.
I have a question. I was talking to one of our long-term members. I know her very well, and we were talking about stewardship, and she looked at me and she said this is our church. We want it here, and we're going to have it here. And I have found over time that more and more people subscribe to that point of view. People in our church want it there, and they support it accordingly.
That's great. Thank you, John. Stephen.
I appreciated the comment on renters and the idea of market value. The situation that we have at our church is we very lovingly and want to provide for scouts who have 2 nights in our renting space, but we are happy to give it to them at no cost. Is that wise of us to do? Is there a dynamic and how to address that in a financial sense? Because it's 2 nights that could be given to renters who could pay. We don't have a doubt that we'd be able to fill those nights. But how do we handle the dynamic of a long running history of scouts, working with scouts because we love the idea of the organization, but with the financial and the deficit in our reality?
That's a tough question, and I was a scouter for many years, so often the congregation is the group committee for a scout group, and therefore there is a greater obligation to provide space and support to them. So that's one of the questions would be, you know, if you are the group committee, then that is something to take into consideration. It's also, I would assume, part of your ministry outreach is to support that scouting group. But if you are finding that you are having difficulty finding time for other renters, you might want to sit down with the scout group and say, is it possible for both units to meet on the same night in different parts of the building? Or are there other arrangements that can be made so that basically you can share the space better? Maybe they could move to a different area. I would say it's about having the conversation, but also having the conversation with your congregation, because this could be a very important part of their outreach. And perhaps you say, you know, we want to continue to support the scouts, but to do that, we need to have income from other sources. So maybe there's people who are offered to make donations to be able to continue that important scouting ministry.
And if I could add to that as well, Lynn, I would say, like in stewardship, we always talk about relationship building. So I think it's always, in any relationship in our lives, it's always good to sit down and talk with those folks, the scouting group, and say, like, how is everything going for you? You know, do you have everything you need? Also, we are noticing that this is sort of prime time, and what could we be doing? But that's a great example of what I had noted in my presentation, where maybe once a year, like around Christmas, is a great time to talk to the scout leaders and say, would you mind if we gave a letter to your families, or if we came and spoke to the families and said, this is what our church does, this is the ministry we offer, if you felt you could support it, we would love, we're so glad that you're in our space. We love that we can offer this to you. If you feel you can support our ministry, we would be so appreciative. So I think that that's a great group. And then the other piece I would say is that if you continue with that and you're not charging the group, that you advertise that everywhere. Like, we give space to free space to community groups. It's part of our ministry. It's part of our outreach. Don't let that go unnamed or unnoticed, because there might be other people, as Lynn saying, who are like, okay, I want to support that. Like, I want to make sure that there still are free spaces in our community. So that would be my 2 cents.
And Jane, you have a question.
Yes, I do. We have a small rural church, and so the biggest cost for us, probably 75% of our cost, is tied up in minister's salary and benefits.
Yep.
And so the givings that we receive barely cover that, let alone the operation of the church. So is our only option to say we have to cut our minister's hours? That's where I have a concern. The other thing is, we are the result of an amalgamation, so we do have funds that we can access. And so I would have to say every year we ask our trustees to transfer like $10,000 to help us cover costs. I don't know where to go from here.
I would say that what we're finding in rural congregations is that this is where a lot of the conversation is happening about collaborative ministry. So if you can't afford, say, full time anymore, you might have a neighbor who would be interested in 10 or 15 hours a week of your minister's time. And so together you still manage to maintain a full-time position, but the minister is shared between the two congregations. And so that is happening across all three regions and is an option. And as we've said, the collaborative ministry information is on the websites, or John or I are happy to talk about that or talk to your boards about that. Again, as Micol mentioned too, talk to your ministers, and ministers, you know, I would strongly recommend that you be aware of the financial situation of your congregation and be part of those conversations too. But the other big cost for a lot of rural churches is insurance. So this new insurance program is actually, we're going to be self-insuring, and the United Church will be covering the insurance for congregations. So that's why there is the price discount. So that's the other thing that may help rural congregations quite a bit.
Yeah, and Lynne, John, and I have talked with the governing bodies of churches around, you know, when there's that concern about what next and how do we handle this, talking about the different options, because, you know, the governing body has to make some decisions, and the congregation as a whole has to make some decisions. So definitely that'd be the first place to start, is to reach out as your church to, Jane, I'm not sure which region you're in, but to reach out, if you're Western Ontario Waterways, to John and myself. If you're in Antler River, to Lynne, or Antler River or Horseshoe Falls, to Lynne and myself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're not, our churches aren't alone, and that's something that we hold on to, that we've got wisdom to share.
Okay, folks, we are, I have no other hands raised in the chat, and we are 4 minutes past our time. So I will say thank you very much for your attendance here, and blessings as you move forward with your own congregations in trying to address deficit dilemmas. And for those who would like to stay for a couple more minutes or have questions, because we're out of time, feel free to leave, but then we'll address a couple more questions still. So we're not holding you back, asking you to stay. You can leave. We'll still answer a few questions. Robert.
John, I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us to thank you to you and Lynne and Brenna and Micol for the time that you spent putting this together. It's been very informative, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else does. So thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing
Thank
that,
you.
Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had a thought. Can I share something?
Absolutely.
Just about rentals. You know, we're all struggling with our own rental, and we probably are not advertising as best as we can, but I wondered if we could all, you know, get together and have somebody market our rooms for rent, you know, and we would be charging market rent.
I'm glad you said that, because there is a great website that has been created that helps churches basically advertise their space online, sort of like Airbnb.
Yeah.
Oh,
John, I don't know if you can remember the name of it, but it was put together with a grant from the United Church Foundation. And I think we put it on Facebook when it first came out, but we can put it on Facebook again.
That would be great, because we have such a great resource there that is available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And community kitchens is another thing. A lot of people rent the kitchens because they're approved. And so businesses will even come in and rent church kitchens because they are an approved kitchen.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was a great webinar tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you advertise you can put your own church on there?
Yeah,
Yes.
the particular rooms, and then it does all of it. So if you have one room and you've advertised it goes for $100 for an evening, say 2 hours, then it does all of the work around connecting you, and it takes care of the fee. There's a charge, of course, but it takes care of the fee and then pays you.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's what I was dreaming of.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so that is
Okay.
something that's coming up or starting. It really has to be advertised more so people know.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there any other questions?
John, I have a question. This is Colleen from the
Hi,
Aaron
Colleen,
United
yep.
Church. Hi. I was wondering in that if there were any churches out there that had technical support people that we could work together with. Our church and that has been experiencing some feedback and that we've got in our church when we were on Zoom. We just can't seem to figure it out, but we were just wondering what other churches have and whether there are technicians that we could kind of look at and get some advice from.
Yeah, I know around here a lot of churches, reach out to one another to ask about tech spaces. I'm in a small rural area, and there's a company that a lot of churches have used, but it's not uncommon that when one church does a development, that other churches reach out and talk about their experience, talk about what they've done. So that may be the easiest for local areas.
Or feel free to use our regional council Facebook page.
Okay.
To say, hey, we're in this area. We're looking to, talk to other congregations about their tech support.
Okay.
And invite them to contact you. That might also be a way to get in touch with them, because there are lots of congregations that have either hired somebody to do tech support or have worked with companies recently. And there's a great Zoom church or something Facebook group as well that is specifically about using Zoom for church services.
Yeah. Can I help on that one?
Sure,
Yes,
Ken.
sure.
Ken Byers from Emmanuel. We've been involved with an organization, the web's Facebook site, Canadian Churches That Live Stream. It was started about a year and a half ago, and now there's 600 members on it from all across Canada.
Wow.
And John Bedell is the host and has physically helped many, many churches, including ours, to get live streaming.
Okay.
And excellent help, and they usually have meetings. We'll sometimes have meetings, but there's certainly a chat group, and people with all kinds of experience has been very, very helpful. So it's Facebook page, Canadian Churches That Live Stream.
Well, and I'm just thinking the nature of things these days and talking about collaborative ministry, like a tech person is one that you could share between churches that are very far apart.
Yep.
Same with communications. That's a staff position that you could share between churches, because a person could do that job completely remotely, do your website, your newsletter, all that kind of thing. So I think bigger. It doesn't always now have to be the church right next door. For some things that, of course, you still have to do it that way, but maybe with these sorts of things, you can get support from further afield, which is really exciting.
Okay.
Very
Well, thank
true.
you very much. Thanks for your ideas. That's great.
Anyone else? Last call. All right, folks, thank you very much. I'm going to close the meeting then.